Um, for the first session, we're going to have our first speaker. I don't think they're here yet, but give us a little time.
Ms. McCormick is experiencing technical difficulties right now, but I am
okay. Well, since she's experiencing technical difficulties, we do have another speaker. Mr. Marzette, if you would like to go first instead of what we originally, that would be great as an audible.
Hello. Do you want me to kind of go through like the questions that were kind of sent to me?
First, if you just want to give us like an overview of your career and stuff, and then we'll jump into the questions from there.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Dontario Marzette. Have the privilege and honor of being the school leader here at KIPP Tulsa University Prep High School. This is my 12th year in education and my 12th year at KIPP Tulsa. Taryn was one of my students at the KIPP Middle School when we started our marching band program at the middle school. I am a graduate of Langston University, 2009 graduate. I am also here from Tulsa. I see my classmate on here, Ms. Howard. We graduated from Booker T together in 2004. And I'm just glad to be here, glad to be of any assistance to you all. If you kind of like my background, whatever, I was a music education major in college. Graduated 2009, went to KIPP Tulsa, was hired there, started a music program, taught music for 5 years. I did a lot of different things with that. You know, you always have like multiple hats. So did that, was like the tech person there at school, also did like math, blended learning at the middle school as well. Became assistant principal for about 3 years at KIPP Tulsa at the middle school. And then I was the school leader at our middle school for 3 years. And this is actually my first year at our high school. But that's a little background of just my short story of being a leader. We're going from a teacher to a leader.
Right on. Haley, do you have the questions ready?
I do have the questions ready.
Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, I want to know, when you were in high school, did you think you would ever use those math or English language skills ever again?
Yes and no. I knew I was always going to go to college, but I didn't know for sure. Originally, when I went to college, I was going to be I wanted to be a lawyer, and I wanted to go be a criminal justice major, go into law school, all that. But when I realized reading has never been, it has not been my favorite subject. ELA, not my favorite subject, but I know like you have to really read a lot of volumes of text and all that for law. And I'm like, I don't think I really want to do that. So I knew that it was going to come in handy in some form or fashion. But at the time, I didn't know exactly like how it was going to impact my my career, my trajectory at that time in high school. High school, you just don't know. In high school, you know it all in a way, but you never knew like how those skills are going to benefit you down the road. So not as much, I would say.
And I know you mentioned that English wasn't one of your favorite subjects. What subjects did you enjoy when you were in high school?
Yes, my favorite core subject has always been math, because I feel like math I guess growing up, I never understood or never really seen like actual rubric and how teachers graded my work, or how did they assess my writing. I never really knew growing up, so I don't think the grading like aspect of it was really transparent with me as a student. Math, it was like either you got it right or you got it wrong, and it was very clear and straight to the point. So I always loved math, and that's one of the reasons why I did not like ELA as much. I had like I say traumatized in a way where you have the teacher like grade it and give it back to you, don't really tell you exactly how you got it wrong, or when it came to ELA, didn't tell you like what, if it's like subject verb agreement or just grammar. I did not know. Some teachers I had did not give me the feedback that I wanted.
Okay, cool. And I'm also curious, how did you use the skills that you learned in your English classes and in your math classes in your current field of work?
Well, I think that I gained a level of appreciation of, in particular, ELA was when I went to college. I feel like it took a professor that was not originally from the United States. He was actually from, I think, the Gambia, I believe, in Africa, to really break it down for me. And it's kind of embarrassing in ways. Like, actually, this is not his native tongue or native language, but he actually had to break it down for me a little bit further for me to really understand it. And just those skills that I learned and just techniques, I use it every day now because, we're virtual. I'm sure everyone types several emails, several letters. I'm always typing. I'm constantly typing. So you have to make sure that your language is appropriate. You have to make sure that you're using a proper tense, proper subject verb agreement, all of the above. You have to make sure that is intact.
We've also got a question in the chat for you. Are there any Tulsa music programs that you want to shout out right now?
Can you be a little bit more specific about music programs?
I don't know. Can we be a little bit more specific, guys? What type of programs are we looking at? While he's thinking of that, we'll move on to our next question and we'll come back to you with his updated one. But I'm curious, you talked a lot about how you use English in your work right now, but do you notice yourself using a certain math class more?
Maybe sometimes algebra a little bit, because I do deal with a lot of spreadsheets at times. So just being able to understand a particular formula. Sometimes I may not know certain formulas within Excel, but just my skill set from what I learned in math previously, I can like figure it out based on certain formulas to get a certain output that I need within a spreadsheet. So I see that happening a lot. Of course, you got to use measurement a lot. We've been using, 6 feet apart, 3 feet apart here and there. So I've been using tape measures lately around the school. So that's been a skill set to be able to do centimeters, inches, and all that. But I think like a lot of that, even personally, I say personally, when you're thinking about doing any type of like home renovation, geometry comes into effect a lot with that. And I don't think people realize that if you're doing some type of like home improvement self work at the house, you have to know like all those measurements and conversions.
I'm also going to ask you about every student's favorite thing, group assignments. When was the first time you remember doing a group assignment in high school, and how did it, or did it even prepare you for your future career?
I would say a group assignment that I remember doing in high school was doing a Spanish film. I think I was in Spanish 3, and we did like a Spanish film, strictly all Spanish, having to work with other people that you probably don't technically talk to on a daily basis, but you have to kind of quickly build relationships with people. You have to coordinate times in which you got to meet at so-and-so's house to film. You got a script, like almost like a whole production that I had to do. But I learned just like how to work well together, teamwork. I think that was very vital for me, even in my journey here, because actually I'm new to this school, right? And although I know majority of the staff members here, but it's always, you're building team every year. So it's like a skill that you have to do every year. Every time you get a new member, a new team member, you're building team. So that's something that was kind of a transferable takeaway for me.
Nice. And Melanie would like to know, what advice would you give to a high school who would want to follow in your footsteps?
Follow in my footsteps?
Yes.
I would say this. I would say give it your all, because you never know where your pathway is going to take you. One thing that I always I would always be upset, like having like you be a % off from a letter grade. So it's like, if I would have just did a little bit extra, I could have had a whole different letter grade than what I have now. And that could be X amount of points for your GPA that could impact scholarship dollars, that could impact certain college entrance exams or entrance admission requirements. I think I always say just give it your all, because it will benefit you later.
Ricky would also like to know, how has your experience been as a TPS teacher, and how did you fund your college education? Do you have any tips on that?
One, I want to say that I work at KIPP Tulsa. We're a charter school, so we don't really we're not really officially part of TPS. We're affiliated with TPS. We're not part of TPS. I would say that. Can you ask us the second part of the question?
Do you have any tips for funding college education?
Funding. I think the best thing is to make good grades, because I will strongly. I would say I do not really recommend trying to get loans, but if you have to get them, then to get towards your dream, then yeah, you can get them. But if you're making the appropriate grades, and you also are seeking out scholarship dollars, I think that's the best bet. Grant dollars, the best bet. If you are a student that falls under certain guidelines when it comes to finances with your family, and you can get like Oklahoma Promise, go to school for free if at all possible, because it may not seem like a big deal now, but when you get older, you'll get tired of paying student loans. You get tired of paying unnecessary bills. It's like, why am I still paying for this? And I try to just encourage, just get free money. If somebody's gonna give you some free money, get that money. So that's all I gotta say.
Also, Ricky would like to correct this question. Instead of asking how your experience has been as a TPS teacher, how has it been in the educational field in general?
It has its highs and lows, I would say. Teaching can be very rewarding. If you go into teaching, you definitely don't go in it for the money. We all know that. You go in it for the relationships that you build, the lives that you impact. We always say that as a teacher, you always teach for the 30-year-old kid, not necessarily the 12 or 13-year-old kid, because they don't know what they're becoming. They don't know who they're going to be. So it's always important to think of the student for where they're going to be down the road.
And here's another question that came from the chat. Angela would like to know, how does music relate to learning other subjects?
I'm glad you asked that. I would say music is definitely intertwined in every subject area. But music, hold on one second, Galvies. We got band practice going on too outside. It's all that noise. But music is definitely intertwined in every subject area. History, you got music history. We always talk about reading from left to right, improving your reading skills. You have to do that in music. You have to real time calculate math while you're reading music, and you sight reading music. It's like real time. And then music and vibration. We're talking about vibrations. Every note has a particular vibration. So you can tie in the science element of that as well. So music is intertwined in everything.
We're also curious, what is one thing you would like students to remember about their math and ELA courses?
I would say that teachers, or just everyone, harps a lot on math and reading a lot, and maybe more than other subjects, but it's for a reason, right? Because it's really embedded in everything else. Reading, you're gonna read for the rest of your life. It is what it is. And of course, you can say, oh, I can use a calculator for math, but you can't depend on all these other external items all the time. You have to ensure that you know how to do at least basic math to improve your practice on whatever you're doing. Like, how do you set yourself apart from another candidate for the same role? So you have to invest in yourself as much as possible, because math and reading is going to be vital for, I would say it's going to be vital for whatever role you choose to do in life.
Okay, we're down to our last couple of questions, but I just wanted to also ask, when was the first time you kind of introduced to critical thinking in school, and what courses helped you develop that the most?
You said, when did I introduce it?
When were you introduced to critical thinking?
Okay. I feel like as a child, as an elementary student, is more like critical thinking around, or just problem solving. It can be through conflict and conflict resolution. It can be, for me, I experienced a lot in like science projects as a student. It's trying to like using those critical thinking skills in order to solve a particular problem, a world problem. That was like, and also as a kid, that's outside of school too. I think that, when I was a kid, I think I was a kid back in the 90s and the late 80s or whatever. We did things differently. So we made up things. We critically thought about different things. So, and I think that for a kid now in today's time, I think that it's going to take those opportunities to maybe design some things for yourself. It can be puzzles, right? And like my daughter loves puzzles. She's 4 years old and she loves puzzles, but that helps her in her critical thinking and how to problem solve and how to figure things out, because she does it on her own. She loves puzzles. So I think it's like little things like that improves your skill overall and can definitely impact your overall critical thinking skills.
Okay, thank you so much. I think unless anyone else would like last call, put some questions in the chat. We really appreciate your time, and I'm going to hand this over to Danny.
Thank you,
Right
Mr.
on.
Lizette.
Yeah, thank you. If everybody can say thank you in the chat or out loud, either way, like that was amazing.
Thank you, Ontario. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you. That was pretty awesome.
All right. So for our next speaker, we have Ms. McCormick, and she's going to give us a little bit of insight. She is actually at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Tulsa. So she's going to give us a little bit insight in her career, answer a couple questions for us as well. So whenever you're ready, Ms. McCormick.
I think you're muted.
Mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I'm an assistant United States attorney. And so basically, my responsibility is to represent the United States in various types of matters. I'm assigned to the criminal division. So basically, I'm a federal prosecutor. I want to give you just a little bit of an overview on my career leading to my current position. I am a native of Denver, Colorado. And from probably about the age of maybe 4th grade, 5th grade, I had a dream of becoming an attorney. I didn't really know at that time the type of attorney or the type of law I wanted to practice, but I felt like I wanted to be in a courtroom. And I also had a dream or an aspiration to attend a historically Black university. My mother was a native of Tulsa, so I had a lot of family members who attended Langston University. So it was a natural part of my progression to attend Langston University. And then I ended up following that dream and following suit. And then I ended up going to University of Tulsa for law school. During the time I was in law school, I had the great fortune of working with a lawyer who is very well known here in Tulsa, Jim Goodwin. And he has a general practice where he represents individuals in criminal defense. He does family law, he does civil law. So it was a really great opportunity to give me exposure on different areas. Mr. Goodwin saw in me that I was probably well suited to be a prosecutor. So my first job out of law school was to become an assistant district attorney. I did that in Oklahoma County for about 6 years. And then I worked for the state attorney general's office. And then I started working for the Northern District of Oklahoma. And so basically what I do on a day-to-day basis is I prosecute individuals for their violation of different types of laws, including violations of national security or organized crime, general felonies. But I find it rewarding because it is a service-oriented profession. And I feel like I am giving back to my community by being a good and responsible, fair-minded prosecutor.
Right on. That's amazing. All right. And we'll jump. Do you have anything else to add or?
Well, I'm prepared to answer questions.
Right on. Perfect. We'll jump right into the questions.
Here's just a reminder to everyone, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. But if not, we do have some questions already prepared. So I'm curious, when you were in high school, did you ever think that you would use math or English ever again?
And I did. So as I stated in my previous response, it was a pretty early age when I had the idea that I wanted to practice law of some sort. And my parents were big proponents of education. My mother was an English major, and she always emphasized the importance of reading and writing. I don't think I probably took it as seriously as I would if I were doing it over again, but there was always a great emphasis on speaking abilities, writing abilities, using your words in a way that you can sell ideas. That was a big thought in my house. Additionally, as far as math, I was a natural at math. I probably could have majored in math just because maybe it's the way I'm wired, but I tend to do well in math classes. And I think it probably had something to do with my musicianship. My first love is music. And so I began studying voice and piano, actually reading music at a very early age. And I think the analytical part of math, along with my musical training, probably had a lot to do with my development of analytical skills.
Angela would like to know what skills best prepared you for your career in law.
I think reading. I can't emphasize it enough. Reading. In my household, we started reading at an early age, just reading the newspaper. And then in my household now, we are big proponents of reading. I have to read a lot for my for work-related things, but I love reading. And for me, reading at some point in my life was no longer a chore. It was something that allowed me to go to different places that I may not have been able to physically travel, or allowed me to learn various areas of discipline that weren't necessarily things that I studied in school, but just something I wanted to learn about. Reading, and it sounds corny, but reading really can be an adventure. And I can't emphasize the importance of reading enough.
Ricky would also like to know, do you have any advice for the LSAT exam?
Yes, the LSAT. Standardized test. It's like no other. And I took the LSAT a couple of times. And I will say the best investment that I made towards my legal training was to invest in a course, and it may have changed since then, but back then it was called the Kaplan course. And it's basically a course that prepares you to do your best on the LSAT. It's an investment just like any other part of your education. And I heard the previous speaker who talked about, ways to better yourself and better prepare yourself for whatever it is you decide to do. I think investing in an LSAT course to prepare you so that you have a leg up and you create options for yourself when you're looking for a law school, You want to look for them just like they're looking for you. And you want to be in a position where you can rule schools out because you know you can do better. Having a solid, strong LSAT score makes you a more marketable law student.
Danny wants to know, what do you think the most challenging aspect of being a lawyer is?
I think the most challenging aspect is probably seeing, and this is because of my profession, I tend to see people when they are at their worst. I have learned over time that it's not seeing people who are necessarily bad people. They are perhaps people who have made poor choices, and I see them at a bad time in their life. And you always want to maintain a focus where you are fair-minded and you are dealing or exercising your discretion with an even hand. And I don't want to suggest that that is something that's difficult to do, but when you are armed with the type of power that a federal prosecutor is armed with, you should constantly remind yourself that it's a responsibility and you have to be careful in your exercise of the discretion that's afforded to you.
Avery would like to know, what did you like the most about law school, and what was the most difficult part of law school for you?
Oh, law school was not easy for me. Law school was the greatest challenge I've probably ever experienced. And leading to that, I'll say this: I have always been an A student, and I've always been a person who excelled at most things that I've tried. When you go to law school, you're with a lot of people who have excelled at a lot of things. And so it becomes real challenging when you're among the cream of the crop and you're still striving to rise to a certain level. Law school was very challenging in that it doesn't really teach you how to practice law. You go, you take very difficult courses, you do a lot of reading, as I emphasized earlier. But I would say I learned the least about practicing law in most of my law school classes. Not until maybe the last year of law school, when you've completed all of the required courses and you're starting to identify perhaps an area where you want to specialize or where you want to use your skills, do you really get an opportunity to take classes where you're in finding your niche or finding an area that may interest you and you really want to use your education. Law school was challenging. I don't want to understate that or make light of it. Law school, it was extremely challenging, and it was a time in my life where I had to really maintain focus and kind of push aside a lot of the extracurricular activities that I was used to participating in.
Angela would like to know, do you think standardized tests are racist?
That's an interesting question. I think there are aspects of standardized tests that can be viewed as racist, but I don't want to broad brush in responding to that question. I think we are becoming better educated as minorities and in various areas to learn how to better prepare ourselves for standardized tests. So while it may not come natural to take standardized tests for various groups because of the lack of exposure that we may have had or because of differences in education, I think we as a people, because of whether it's because of internet or social media, we're reading more. We are learning to better prepare ourselves for standardized tests. So while I think there may be some aspects that may be viewed as racist, I don't want to broad brush and say that they are. We can better prepare ourselves so that anyone can do well on standardized tests.
Melanie would like to know, do you have any goals for your career as a lawyer?
I do. And so my pattern in life, I am very goal oriented, and I tend to focus on a goal, and then of course then set out for the next plateau, whatever that may be. Right now, I am enjoying being in the courtroom. I love litigation. I love motion practice. I love writing. I like jury trials. I like the challenges that come with it. And right now, one of my short-term goals is to do more writing in my legal career.
Okay, so we kind of talked about how reading was incredibly important for you and your career. How exactly do you implement the skills from your ELA classes? How easily did they transfer over to your career in law?
I think it transferred over naturally, and it's something that happens over time. It takes practice. You hear people say that they are practicing law or practicing medicine. In the field of law, I think that, and as a litigator, that is definitely true, because each time you have a trial or anytime you're arguing a legal issue, as far going even back to goals, you are striving to do it better or to learn some body of law that you didn't have a command of previously. So reading is a big part of that, because you are reading about other cases, or you're reading about other courts and how they may have interpreted a particular law or a case or applied a case. And so reading and the practice of comprehension and understanding various aspects of the law, it's something that comes with time, and it's something that you have to focus on, and you should practice as you're practicing law to do it better and better daily. I'm also curious, in your career in law, do you ever use any math skills that you picked up in high school or college? I do use math skills now, and let me kind of explain. In our prosecution or the cases that I handle, I usually have a team of individuals I'm working with. And in most of my organized crime cases, we also have a financial investigation, because we want to know where the money went in the crime. And so I have to work with financial analysts, or I might work with a special agent with the IRS. And I have to understand their analysis. I have to understand when they describe to me that so many millions of dollars were wired to this location, or if an illegal product or contraband is valued at a certain amount. I have to have a working knowledge of that if I'm going to argue an issue to a judge, or if I'm going to argue a factual point to a jury. So the math part of it has been equally important as the reading part. I'm also curious, you said reading was incredibly important, and you also said you were a natural at math. So which one was your favorite subject in school, or was it like a completely other one? I think math related subjects were my favorite in school. And that even went through college, through undergrad. I always enjoyed math classes. And do you remember the first time you had a group assignment, and how exactly did it help you prepare for your future career? Group assignments. I would say that as just naturally, I don't prefer group assignments. But anymore in my profession, I find that most of my approaches to most of the cases that I handle, it's a group effort. And just as I described in my previous response, I'm relying on and working with various components, individuals who bring different skill sets to our case, and we need each other to have a successful prosecution. And so anymore, I have a better appreciation for group assignments. But if I think back to group assignments prior to becoming a lawyer, I mean, I think of those group assignments when you're in high school or college, and inevitably, it would seem there were members within the group who didn't do as much as some other members. And so I'm the type of person, I'm a get her done type person, and I can always count on what I'm bringing to the group. So I think over time, what I've learned is to value what other group members bring, and to learn how to maximize what other team members have to contribute to an effort. Erica would like to know, is there any advice you would like to give to students who are curious about going into law? Yes. So if you are interested in law, just know that as far as undergraduate studies, anymore, there aren't a lot of pre-law programs. You can major in just about anything and go to law school. I was in law school with individuals who had prior careers in various professions. I can think of individuals who had a background in insurance or engineers. I was in law school with someone who had already been to medical school. And so there's not a set major that is a standard for someone who's planning to go to law school. But what I would emphasize is that regardless of what your major is, as I emphasized early on, reading, writing, those basic skills are fundamental regardless of what area of law you decide to practice.
And we only have a couple more questions left, but when did you first start to utilize critical thinking in school? What course kind of introduced it to you?
You know, I thought about that question because I saw it in one of the documents you sent out. And I recall having a critical thinking class in undergraduate, in my undergraduate studies. And it was an elective, but I recall that was actually a course where we worked in groups to discuss different ways to approach problems or to enhance critical thinking. So undergraduate studies were probably my first formal approach to critical thinking.
And I know you mentioned a lot about working with numbers in your field, specifically how it relates to embezzlement and topics like that. Can you think of a class or a math class that most closely correlates with the type of math you're doing now?
I think it's really a combination of a number of courses, but I would think in terms of just basic math skills, understanding, and this is kind of collateral to just basic math, but marketing. A lot of times if I'm prosecuting a case, I have to understand the industry that is at issue in the case. And you have to understand how a product is sold. And so it has everything to do with supply and demand, and how an item may be marketed. It may be sold in different amounts depending on whether you're buying a larger amount or a smaller amount. So I think that's a collateral skill, but still math related.
Anza would like to know, how important are the relationships that you built in school?
You know, I've maintained Tulsa is a small community. So a lot of the individuals I attended law school with and graduated with, I now see them in practice. And relationships are invaluable. And that's not something that is taught. That's not something that comes natural for a lot of people. I tend to enjoy being around other people and interacting with other people. So it's not a struggle for me, but I would say in the legal profession, relationships and reputation means everything.
I'm personally very curious. You mentioned this being your goal since you were very young. Was there ever a time where you doubted yourself or you doubted your path?
You know, my parents were the types of parents who always encouraged us. If you had a goal, it wasn't a question of whether you could meet it. It was when you were going to meet that goal. And so even though I mentioned law school as a very challenging experience, there wasn't a time where I doubted I would accomplish law school. It didn't go exactly the way I thought it would if I were to map it out. However, there were days where I would sit and I would dream and think ahead and reflect on the time when I knew I would accomplish that goal. So there wasn't a time where I doubted it. But there were times where it was extremely challenging and it just required an extra push on my part.
Ooh, Angela's asking a very interesting question. What does your job look like now that we're in the middle of a pandemic?
It's very challenging, especially in our courthouse. As I stated, I'm in the federal courthouse. We have not tried or held jury trials since March. And so, as you can imagine, we are constantly filing new cases, and we're not able to, all cases don't result in trial, but a fair number of them do result in trial. So we have quite a backlog of cases that have to be tried at this time. Cases that can be resolved without a trial, like let's say if there is a motion that's filed and it's dispositive of the case, we might be able to resolve a case based on that motion. Or in my instance, where I'm prosecuting crimes, an individual might enter a guilty plea and the case is resolved. So it has caused the process to slow down in many instances, but to the extent we can move some cases along, we are.
Are there any plans in case this type of situation continues on in the long term?
You know, it's right now we are kind of on a month by month assessment. Each month we're looking at the CDC guidelines. We're looking at the numbers in our community. We're looking at all the things just to make sure, because our goal is not just to move cases along. Safety is of the utmost importance, and we certainly don't want to bring jurors who are just everyday citizens into our courthouse and bring them into an unsafe environment.
We have a question from Erica. Are there any tips that you have about note-taking, studying, or retaining information that can relate to our high schoolers or maybe anyone who's considering going to law school?
Yes, and so I'm going to go back to something you heard me say earlier. Read, read, read. So reading is important, and I say it, and hopefully, like as it happened with me, reading becomes something that you enjoy. And along with reading, what I try to do, because I love reading history, but I try to make myself read things that I don't necessarily enjoy in order to push myself. So I would challenge you to read about all sorts of things, not just things that you enjoy.
Angela would like to hear your opinion on plea deals. Do you think they're more beneficial or do you think they're harmful?
Well, I think plea negotiations and plea deals are a necessary part of our system. I would say we try probably about 10% of the cases that are filed. If we didn't have plea deals or plea negotiations, we would never try all of those cases. And so our system is such that it's set up to give individuals who accept responsibility kind of a break. The federal system uses what we call sentencing guidelines. And if you're a person who's charged with a crime and you accept responsibility early in the process, that's something that can weigh in your favor. Now, that's certainly not to say that if you haven't committed a crime, you should go in and you should accept responsibility when you really haven't done something wrong. That's not what I'm saying. But if you know that you are a person and you're guilty as charged, the law gives you credit and gives you some leniency for accepting responsibility early in the process.
Melanie has a question that she called silly, but I think is very interesting. What are some things that law and crime TV shows portray inaccurately?
Almost everything. And it's frustrating to watch. First of all, obviously, crimes aren't committed and solved within 1 hour. And also, a lot of the shows educate our public, and this is a challenge because our jurors come into our courtrooms and they expect us to have the same technology that's on NBC, and it's simply not the case. And so a lot of times jurors will come into a courtroom and they will have seen something that's on some of the crime shows, and they'll expect us to have this made up technology. So television, court TV, a lot of those shows, they do a disservice to our jurors because it falsely educates them to think or believe that certain things exist that don't. And in all actuality, when we are trying cases, someone's liberty is at stake, and it's not for entertainment. So you have to kind of reel jurors back in to say, This is not for fun. And everyone's role in the process is extremely important, but we spend a lot of time during a part of the trial called jury selection or voir dire, where we want to see what jurors are thinking. We want to know what knowledge you think you're bringing into the system. And so as a lawyer, I kind of cringe when I think about some of the courtroom dramas or the television shows that provide a miseducation of what a courtroom is really like.
Were there any TV shows you can think of off the top of your head that were particularly off?
Yeah, I tend not to watch those. And so it's funny, I like to watch medical dramas, which my friends who are physicians feel the same way about, like ER or Grey's Anatomy. But I've probably watched Law and Order, and I'm like, you can't do that, or you can't ask a question that way, or things like that. Those shows tend to make me cringe when I watch them. Now, I will tell you, a drama or a movie that is an excellent illustration of cross-examination, and it's kind of funny, My Cousin Vinny, and it's an old movie. You guys probably have never seen it or heard of it, but the way he cross-examines some of the witnesses is actually a good illustration of how cross-examination should occur.
Is there anything that you wish you knew before you went into law school, before you went into your career, anything that really surprised you?
You know, growing up, I didn't have a close relationship with a lot of lawyers. My parents were in service-oriented professions, but they were not lawyers. And I wish I had taken the time as a high schooler or even an undergrad to spend time with someone who could have helped shape my thinking or help shape kind of the way I used my extracurricular activities to prepare me for law school.
And we're down to our last couple of questions. Angela would like to know if you have any thoughts you'd like to share on the recent Supreme Court nomination and confirmation.
Well, I try to keep an open mind. The process is fascinating even for me as a lawyer. It is quite an accomplishment to be nominated for the high court. And surprisingly, the lawyers in my office and we were huddled around the computer watching the hearings, just like many other Americans were. I don't want to anticipate or try to read tea leaves on how that justice is going to rule on various important issues. I am glad to see that another female was nominated. And, you know, I guess we just have to kind of stay tuned to see how the law is shaped by the new makeup of our court.
And very last question, thank you so much for your time. What is something that you would like students to remember about their math and English language arts courses?
I know as far as a lawyer, when I was in high school, I never would have thought that math would have been as vital to my daily profession as it is. I think it's important because of the way it has shaped my thinking and my analytical skills. I think I talked a little bit about English and the writing aspect and kind of understanding how that would fit into good lawyering. I did not have the same view of math, although I liked math. So I would say to students, I can't emphasize the importance of either of those subjects, and you should spend as much time and focus as you can so that you sharpen your abilities in both areas. You never know how you're going to use those things in your selected profession.
And that was our very last question. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm going to hand this over to Danny.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you
so much.
That was amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Like, I can't even say how amazing that was. That was so good. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Yeah, you too. So for our next speaker, We actually had the speaker between now and 7:05 had to drop. We do have Mr. Rojas from the Gathering Place to come on. So whenever you're ready, Mr. Rojas, take it away.
Great. Hi, good evening. How's everyone doing? Good. Well, I guess I'll just start off on share a little bit about what I do here at the park, and then just maybe explain a little bit about my background too. And then honestly from there, just like to open it up for questions. So I work here at Gathering Place. I started a little over, I guess, 3 years ago, before the park opened. And my role here focuses on community relations and our strategic communications efforts for the park. And so for those of you who have been to the park, I'm sure just know that it's a beautiful place. It's one of the, just really it's transformed, I think, what people outside of Tulsa think about when they hear the name Tulsa, Oklahoma now. And I think a lot of us, we know what the park is, and we've seen it, but sometimes we may not understand really the purpose and the vision and the mission behind it. And that's part of what my role entails. It's I always like to say that the name of the park really reflects the guiding vision of everything that we do here. It's called Gathering Place. It's a place of unity. It's a place of bringing people together. And being a free park, it's easy to say, well, why wouldn't the park automatically be a place for everyone? But it's really not that easy. We know that specifically here in Tulsa, there are barriers that exist. There's history of social inequality, cultural inequality, racial inequality, and that's one of the things that we at the park are always focused on, creating experiences that really create welcoming environments for everybody, no matter your race, your gender, your sexual preference. This is a place for everybody. And so that's what we really strive to do in all of our operations and all of our marketing efforts, and in our programming initiatives too. And so that's really at the forefront of Gathering Place's work. And so we've been open for a little over 2 years, and we've been fortunate enough to have over 3 million guests visit us annually. And seeing people come together from different walks of life, and hearing different languages spoken in the park, and just really seeing the vision come to life. And so, but we know it's something that we're committed to, that we strive to do every single day. We know that it's not perfect, and we're working every single day to just continue to stay focused on our mission, especially now in times of social unrest, and also when it comes to the COVID pandemic. What is the role of open public spaces, outdoor spaces, and what is the value that those spaces can provide to communities? And so we're excited to just continue to innovate, right? And I think that's just part of what we do here at Gathering Place, but also I think just something that me personally, I've always aspired to do in my career is really think, not to just to settle, but also just to continue to innovate, to continue to learn, and continue to change. I think that's so important when we think about growth personally and professionally. And so prior to Gathering Place, I did work at a nonprofit called Teach for America, and I was managing our fundraising and communication efforts for the organization. And so again, just really mission driven, focused more on education, and working with committed, passionate people that wanted to dedicate their first or second jobs right out of college into the classroom, and teach kids throughout our city. And so I was I met a lot of great people there, and it was awesome to just, I think, dive a little bit deeper into our public education system. My wife's actually a teacher. She teaches second grade here in Tulsa, But hearing from her, hearing from the core members at Teacher America, being just that much closer to the school system during my time there just really opened my eyes to, I think, going back to really the vast differences, being in one neighborhood school as compared to another, and just how that can really transform how those communities, how those neighborhoods grow in the future. And so, I think that instilled just even a deeper passion into me for education. I think that's maybe kind of what drew me to that role at Teach for America was just something that my parents really instilled at me at an early age. I think just kind of going back to, us coming to Tulsa. So I was actually born in Argentina, and our family immigrated here to the United States when I was about 2 years old. Really honestly didn't feel like welcome in Tulsa until I was about 5 or 6, I think. I think in our family too, we just really were just kind of feeling it out. I think there were moments where my dad was like, man, what am I doing in Tulsa? We lived in Buenos Aires, which was a city of 16 million people. And he's just like, this is just, let's just go back. And I think ultimately, we made that decision to stay here, to call this city our home. My parents really sacrificed a lot to really get me and my brother and my sister through school. We were actually fortunate and privileged enough to go to a private school here in Tulsa. And just really continue that education and go to college, and then come back to Tulsa to work here. But when we came back, I think that's where working in different areas, I worked for a Spanish English newspaper. That was my first job right out of college, and being able to just immerse myself more within our Hispanic community, just learn about what people are doing on a day-to-day basis, and what people go through on a day-to-day basis, and then translate that to getting deeper and deeper into the school systems and learning about public education. I think that really opened my eyes, opened my networks into where I am today, right? And I think that's, again, just being able to take different things, learn from different experiences, and be able to keep that with you as you grow is just so critical, and that will really help. I think immersing yourself in groups and networks that sometimes don't feel comfortable, I think is always so important, because that's where you can really develop yourself and learn from others, right? I always tell myself that it's not about what I know. It's really about sharing all the things that I've learned along the way from other just tremendously smart people. And I think that's what we do now at my role at Gathering Place, is really bringing a connector, bringing in the community, bringing in organizations, bringing in great ideas to really enhance it at the park and really make our city better. And so that's I guess just a little bit about me and some of the work that I've done, and just background as well. But I think I'll just open it up for questions if you guys want to go there, or want me to dive deeper into anything else.
All right, right on. So we've got some prepared questions for you. And once again, as before, everybody feel free to put questions in the chat if you got any. And I'll pass that on to Haley.
Hi. So for our first question, when you were in high school, did you ever think you were going to use these skills you got in math or English language arts again?
Yeah, definitely. Oh yeah. I remember my math and English classes quite well. Especially I think in high school, right, is when I think that really we went to another level at that point in high school, and it was a struggle for me, especially just trying to keep up. I think that's kind of where I was at that point, but always understanding that, just trying to learn and just try to be in the moment and continuously learn in those classes, I think really has I'm not going to say I'm a whiz at any of those subjects by any means, but I think of course you use math every single day, no matter what your profession is. And so, as far as from a technical standpoint, I don't use math more in my day to day, but it's more into analyzing, planning, budgets, things like that. That's where I really use my math skill sets. And we do a lot of different events here at Gathering Place, which I'm sure you've seen too. But really, when you're planning in bulk and for like truly like masses of people to be in areas and to really create experiences, you have to calculate, you have to estimate, and you have to use math skills and all that. I will say that my English skills are used quite daily. Obviously, now we live in a world of email constantly. But I also do our strategic communications efforts. So press releases, communications, that anything that we send out at Gathering Place usually runs through what we do in community relations and in marketing. And so we're always, proofreading, editing, really challenged to think outside the box and use narratives that are really appealing and attractive to the public. And so we're always, being creative as much as we can. And then also ensuring that our points and our actions are deliberate within those messages too. So yeah, I would say I use more of those skills on a daily basis.
And so I'd like to know, what are some underrated ways that the Gathering Place has contributed to the community and Tulsa?
Yeah, you say underrated? Is that what you said?
Yes. What are some underrated ways it's contributed?
Yeah, I would say just little things as simple as working with our neighborhood schools. That's something we don't really talk about quite frequently, and we when we started the park here, we actually had a lot of people come in from Florida and from different parts of the country. So they weren't really, I was from Tulsa, and I would say over half of our staff actually is native to Tulsa, but a lot of people weren't. And so we really had a concerted effort and be like, okay, well, if we're going to say we're going to be a park for everyone and we want to welcome, people in our city, we need to actually know who lives in our city, right? And so we made a concerted effort to focus on our neighborhood schools first and foremost. The schools that are just a stone's throw away, and those varied from schools at Elliott or Council Oak that are fairly affluent middle class areas, but then you have just right across the river. On the west side of Tulsa, you have the poorest zip code in the city, and Eugene Field's located in there. And they are a neighborhood school. They are less than a mile away from the park. And so it was very important for us to focus on those seven schools that we worked with, but identify how can we be good neighbors. And so we do various things. We'll go and work with the teachers. We'll just be mentors or lunch buddies, reading buddies. We'll just do different things like that throughout the month. Obviously, COVID put a wrench in all that, but we did help over the summer with some of the food giveaway, the food giveaways that they had at their schools, at drop-off locations, things like that we helped out with. And now, as we get ready for the holiday season, we're trying to find creative ways to work with our neighborhood schools. But I would say maybe that's just one small example of some underrated ways that we're working within the community.
And Melanie, I think. Yes, and Melanie would like to know, what are some key events or decisions that led your career to where it is today?
Yeah, good question. I think so I'll say probably what led myself to, if I start like a Teach for America, right? So I think I was ready to kind of make a change when I was working at this newspaper, the Spanish English newspaper here in Tulsa. And honestly, I think it was my wife. She's a teacher. I think obviously just having a great partner that really pushes yourself and pushes each other. I think that's so important. and that really led me to really try to explore like things that I wanted to do. And I think that's really important too, is like what was important that that I had good skill sets in. I knew I had experience in communications. I knew I had experience in relationship building. But then also like, what are you passionate about, right? And then being able to mold that together, and then how does that fit within within the dynamic of your personal life as well? Like, what are you like willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to really you know, put ahead of others? And so so being, you know, understanding like what my skill sets were, what my passions lie, and then like really thinking, okay, what is equitable, like when it comes to like a partnership with like me and my wife and our family. I think that's where that's how decisions were starting to be made. And so so then we yeah, it was just starting to look and to just be open-minded. I think that was the one thing. And then, you know, someone that I already knew just happened to just kind of say, hey, this is something that you know, I thought about you. And so obviously looked into it, and then that's what opened the door into Teach for America. But I met that person because I was challenging myself to participate and get better through a fellowship that I had done a year prior. And so so that was, again, just building networks, being in uncomfortable spaces, growing, which led to that. And then I think the same thing's kind of the case at Gathering Place, right? It is also being open-minded, trying to grow myself, challenge myself, and then just through working hard and then being in different working environments and growing and thinking outside the box and being innovative at Teach for America. I think that's what led to this opportunity here today. So I hope that, yeah, answers your question somewhat, but I know it's just a little bit of rambling, but I think it's just, there's different things that it's always important to keep in mind, and whenever you're looking for career opportunities.
Danny has a question that he'd like to ask you. So
Yeah.
Dan, he's gonna.
Vale. Esta pregunta es para nuestros estudiantes hispanohablantes.
Okay.
Y la primera pregunta sería, ¿qué tipo de consejo darías a los estudiantes hispanohablantes para sus carreras académicas y profesionales?
Bueno,
Bien.
go ahead. Did you have
No.
another question? Okay. Do you want me to answer in Spanish or English?
Spanish.
Okay. Bueno, yo creo que es tan importante seguir aprendiendo la idioma de inglés, pero también el idioma de español. Bueno, mis padres son de Bolivia y Argentina, y fue muy importante a ellos enseñar el idioma, pero también la cultura a nosotros, a mí y mis hermanos. Y yo todavía, yo sé que tengo que practicar todos los días mi español, y a veces yo fallo, y es fácil olvidar esa cultura también, pero es tan importante, ¿no? Porque a veces vas a estar en situaciones donde tienes que usar ese idioma. Y yo sé ahora, como vivimos en un país que cada día se está cambiando, y es un país más multicultural, y hay gente que habla en inglés, español, y siempre, si tienes la oportunidad de poder conectar con esas personas en una manera más auténtica, eso siempre es tan importante. Y yo sé que yo, cuando estoy aquí trabajando en el parque, a veces yo veo una familia que quizás son nuevos a Tulsa, o han vivido aquí 20 años o 10 días, yo no sé, pero a veces ellos están más confortables hablando en su idioma de su país, y eso es parte de lo que hacemos aquí en el parque. Queremos que todos sienten bienvenidos cuando estén aquí, y eso es lo que eso es porque yo valoro mucho la idioma y hablando español y inglés y bueno, a todas las personas que ellos también están en esa misma situación. Yo creo que es tan importante seguir en ese camino y para mí yo creo que les va a beneficiar tremendo en los próximos, bueno, 1 año, 10 años, 20 años, porque el país sigue cambiando todos los días.
And another
Gracias. Oh, yeah, go for it.
And one of the last few questions we have to you is, what is one thing you would like students to remember about math and ELA courses?
Yeah, I would say one thing to remember is definitely to not take those classes for granted. I think it's easy to just kind of breeze your way through. Like I said, I honestly didn't have like that opportunity because it was like very difficult for me, especially like math was like very difficult for me, and I had to like just really work my way through it. But like all my friends, like it always seemed like just all my friends or everybody that you talk to be like, oh yeah, you know, it's simple. I didn't study at all. And you're just like, oh my gosh, like, okay. But I think it's always important to just really just try to be as hard as it may be in high school, to be in the moment is so important, because that's what, you know, when you think about those experiences 10 or 20 years later, that's what's going to really kind of guide you or provide you the foundation in making decisions in the future. And I think, you know, from a technical standpoint with math, but even from like from an English language arts standpoint, that's so important, because just the more you can read and educate yourself in that aspect, really it will just open doors, because you never know. In my world, just with relationship building, it's so important to be able to just connect in some authentic manner to someone. And so the more you're reading and the more you're learning, I think the easier it can be. And so that's what I would say, is just try to stay in the moment and really just try to regurgitate as much information as you can during this time.
Okay, and I think I'm going to wrap it up here and hand it over to Danny. Danny?
All right. So our final speaker we have here is from AAON, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his career as well. So, Mr. Askew, if you want to take it away whenever.
Thank you for your time.
Great. Are you able to hear me?
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Yes. Thank you so much. That was amazing. And like, I don't know. I love the Gathering Place as a place. So it's like very interesting to hear about somebody in management there and like what they did to get there, because the park is absolutely amazing.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Are you able to hear me?
Good.
Oh, great. Okay, so my name is Dwight Askew, and I am the risk management manager here at AAON. And AAON is an HVAC manufacturing company located in Southwest Tulsa. I've been with the company for 6 years, and I've had 4 different positions with the company. In 2014, I was hired as a QTL, which is a quality team leader, and it was my responsibility to supervise employees who were responsible for wiring the control boxes in the units that we produce. After working as a QTL for about 3 months, I was offered a position in the credit department as a credit analyst. And so I worked as a credit analyst for about 1 year. And in that role, I would review credit applications presented to us by customers who are interested in purchasing our equipment. Also, as a credit analyst, I was responsible for collecting on delinquent customer accounts. After a year of being a credit analyst, I was offered the position of credit manager. As a credit manager, I was responsible for managing the credit analyst and collection specialist. About 9 months ago, I was promoted to the position of risk management manager here at AAON. And in this role, I work with internal and external stakeholders in identifying and solving problems associated with the risk. So some of the things that we look at are day-to-day operations and risk associated with day-to-day operations, and also long-term strategies for the company. My path to becoming a risk management manager is very interesting. In high school, I wanted to become a doctor, and that was my focus when I entered Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. However, after 2 years at Morehouse, I decided that I did not want to pursue a career in medicine. I made the decision to become a biology teacher, and so I enrolled in classes related to that career path. After finishing Morehouse, I taught for about 2 years before I made the decision to go back to school and get my MBA. So in 2008, I enrolled in the MBA program at Oklahoma State University and completed the program in about 2 years. After completing my MBA, I applied for the position here at AAON, and that was the beginning of my career path with AAON.
Right on. Thank you for sharing that with us. So we're going to jump right into the questions from here. Once again, if anybody has any questions to ask or any statements to say, put them in the chat and we'll get to them. And I'll hand it off to Haley.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Our very first question for you is going to be, when you were in high school, did you think that you were going to use your math and ELA classes again?
Well, while I was in high school, there was a clear understanding that the goal was to prepare for success after high school. And so this meant that every element of my high school experience would be geared towards that goal. And so with that being the case, I expected to use at some point every lesson, whether it be in math, ELA, I expected to use it after high school. So because I knew that I was preparing for the world outside of high school, I devoted a lot of my attention and effort towards being successful in high school. I wanted to be completely prepared for the world that awaited me after graduation. And I believe it to be very important for individuals to understand the role that high school plays in helping you to achieve your long-term goals. I think high school is the foundation for whatever it is that you want to do in the future.
Ricky has asked a great question. How does your college education help you climb the ranks of the company?
Well, and of course, my path was a little different, but ultimately the college experience and learning from it prepared me for, gave me the ability to develop critical thinking skills, problem solving skills, and an understanding of how to work through different problems and resolve those problems. And so with that, there's not a direct correlation between the degree that I pursued in high school and the role that I play now, but through my path of securing that degree, what it allowed me to do is to gain other soft skills that are instrumental in the success here at AAON.
Ricky would also like to know, what are the traits that you look for in a great employee?
Well, there are many traits that I look for. Of course, you want someone that is that can solve problems. You want someone that is committed to reaching the goals that have been set by the company. You want someone that's self-motivated and able to take on multiple tasks. Those are some of the things that I look for.
We also talked a little bit about your high school experience earlier. So I'm curious, when you were in high school, what was your favorite subject? Was it English, math, or a completely different one?
It's interesting because my favorite subject in high school was also my most difficult class, and that class was my Physics 2 class. I enjoyed learning how the world around us works through Physics 2. In this class, we looked at complex mathematical formulas, and through these complex formulas, we were able to see the many ways math can be applied to how we interact with the environment. Physics 2 provided me with an opportunity to work with unique individuals who had unique ideas and help solve challenging problems. So that was my favorite class in high school.
And how has your classes, English and math, translated into your current work now?
English and math, I missed the question, sorry.
How does your English and math skills kind of translate into this current work? Is there a specific math class that prepared you the most for your current job?
In my work environment, I use algebra and calculus And so when I'm trying to determine like the cost of risk, it helps that I have an understanding of advanced mathematics, or when I'm provided with numbers from an insurance broker and I need to determine how the numbers were created, I'm able to use math to help understand those numbers.
Danny would also like to know, did you take place in any clubs or organizations, either in high school or college, that helped you prepare for your career?
And as far as high school, my focus was on my education, and that was the same even in college. In college, I really didn't have time to participate in extracurricular activities. I was pretty much working the entire time. So my freshman year, for example, I worked as a work study student. I worked a part-time job at UPS, and I did just multiple things to help pay for my college education. And so there was really not much time to participate in extracurricular activities in college.
What class do you first remember having a group assignment in, and how do you think that group assignment prepared you for your career, if it did at all?
The first class that I had a group assignment in, the first class that I remember where I had a group assignment, I think was in my English Lit course. And of course, I was known for completing my work in a timely manner. So there were so many people that were wanting to join my group. And that first group assignment was a challenge to me, actually. The understanding from the group members was that Dwight can do all of the work, and it was my preference for me to do all of the work, of course. I didn't want to compete with the scheduling conflicts that were being presented. I didn't want to figure out how we can all be at the same place at the same time. I didn't want to have to figure out what form of communication would be best for questions. So I did the majority of the work on my own. However, little did we know that the teacher would require each individual to present a part of the project to the class. And so we were definitely not prepared. And so we received a B on that assignment. And that B taught me a valuable lesson, which is to make sure everyone is involved in group projects. This experience definitely prepared me for my career in risk management.
Melanie would like to know, what is a skill that you didn't learn in school but learned on the job?
A skill that I did not learn in school, but I learned on the job. One of the skills that I learned on the job is actually how to interact with individuals, those soft skills, communication skills, being able to work with different groups, getting groups to work together as one unit. Those are some of the skills that I learned on the job.
Do you remember the first time that you were introduced to critical thinking, and can you kind of reflect on how high school and college helped you grow that critical thinking skills?
Critical thinking. Well, I've used critical thinking skills all my life. In a class setting, I remember using critical thinking skills in all of the courses that I had in high school, whether it was math, English, history, or physics. Critical thinking skills were very important and instrumental in my success in that particular class. And that has helped me throughout my career.
Also, what is one thing that you would like for students to remember about their math and ELA courses?
I missed the question. One more time, please.
What is one thing that you would like students to remember about their math and ELA courses as they go on into the future?
Well, the math and ELA courses have been very helpful for me in my field of work. And I think that, you want to definitely dedicate yourself to getting these skills, because ultimately it's going to help you in your future and whatever career path that you choose. I think math and English are the foundation to any career path that you decide to go on, whether it takes you to college, whether it takes you to technical school, whatever direction you're wanting to go in. English and math will be necessary for that career path.
What is one thing that you didn't learn in high school that you wish you did?
The one thing that I didn't learn in high school that I wish I did. The one thing that I did not learn, and really I did not have time to gain the knowledge associated with this specific skill, is the skill of networking meeting new people, developing relationships, and using those relationships to help progress in your goals in your career. That's a skill that I did not learn in high school that I wish I'd learned in high school.
And for our very last question, did you have good writing skills in high school, or is that something you had to grow over time?
The writing skills, if you would have assessed my writing skills my freshman year of high school and compared them to my writing skills as a graduating senior in high school, you would have noticed a drastic change in my ability to communicate on paper. This was not because I took a number of advanced literature courses, but because I enrolled in English courses like creative writing and poetry. And so I used those courses as a way to communicate some of the things that I was feeling at the time. And it gave me an opportunity to have teachers to critique my work and look at my writing skills and help me to develop those. And so through my high school experience, I was able to develop those writing skills that would definitely benefit me in the career path that I selected.
Well, that was our last question for you. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to hand this back over to Danny.
All right, thank you.
Thank you again. Like, once again, every speaker today has been so good, and we appreciate your time, and I'm sure our students will appreciate it as well. All the good advice we've gotten from you. All right, so as for Career Day, that's going to sum it all up. Thank you everybody who came out tonight, and one more final thank you to the speakers, because each one of them was like so good, and the advice that our students now have is so helpful and relatable in a way. I think that was very important too, where they're now going to be able to relate like where they are now to where they could be in the future. And that's so important at this time. All right. So now we are good. You can sign off if you want, and we are going to end the call. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much for coming.
Great job, Danny and Taryn. That was awesome. Have a good night.
Good night.
Yeah, guys.
Thank you.
It was really lit. It was really nice. I hope they enjoy it. And you have it recorded too. So that's even like top notch.
Yeah, I'm gonna come back to this. I'm gonna have to come back to this.
All right. Vea, I think you're the administrator, so I think you're the only person who can officially end the call.
Yep, I'm ending it now. Bye, you guys.
All right.
Bye.